My girlfriend sold my car to go on a trip with her ex to support him after he broke up with his girlfriend. A few months ago, I noticed my girlfriend, Jess, acting strange. We've been together for 2 years and live in a small apartment. She started getting quiet sometimes, like she didn't want to tell me something. She would look at her phone and put it away fast when I came near. I didn't want to seem suspicious, so I ignored it at first. But it happened too often, and I knew she was hiding something. Her ex, Mike, is part of this. They dated in high school. It was her first relationship. They broke up after a couple of years but stayed friends. I never understood why they kept in touch. When I met Jess, she said it wasn't a problem, just old history. Mike had a girlfriend named Lauren. Lauren didn't like Jess talking to Mike either. Lauren and I texted once about it. We both thought it was odd, but we dropped it after that. I hoped Jess would stop contacting him. She didn't. I saw her texting him sometimes, usually late at night or when she thought I wasn't looking. I asked who she was messaging. She said it was a friend or no one important. I saw Mike's name on her phone more than once. When I mentioned it, we fought. I told her it bothered me. She said I was making a big deal out of nothing, that Mike was only a friend now. I wanted to trust her, but it kept bothering me. We argued, she got mad, and then we stopped talking for a while. That happened a lot over those months. Things got worse a few weeks later. Jess started looking sad all the time. She barely talked during dinner, just poked at her food. I asked her what was wrong. She didn't answer at first, but I kept asking. Finally, she said she felt bad for Mike. He had broken up with Lauren and was taking it hard. Jess said she wanted to help him, but she couldn't because I didn't like them talking. I didn't know what to say. She looked guilty, like she'd been thinking about this for a while. I got upset. I told her she shouldn't be worrying about her ex's feelings. She said she wasn't choosing him over me, just that she hated seeing him hurt. It didn't make sense to me. They weren't together anymore. Why was this her problem? We argued again. I said she was too involved with him. She said I didn't understand their friendship. It went back and forth until we both got tired and stopped. She slept on the couch that night. The next day, she apologized. She came into the kitchen while I was making coffee and said she was sorry for fighting. She promised she wouldn't talk to Mike if it upset me that much. I appreciated it, but I still felt uneasy. Things went back to normal for a bit. We watched TV together, made dinner, acted like nothing happened. I thought maybe we'd moved past it. She seemed less distracted, and I didn't see her texting him anymore. I figured she was keeping her word. A couple of weeks later, Jess brought up a trip. She said she wanted to get away for a few days with a friend. She didn't say who at first, just that it would be good for her to clear her head. I thought it sounded fine. We'd been stuck in the apartment a lot, and I knew she'd been stressed. I told her to go for it. She seemed happy about that, started planning right away. She said she'd be gone for a week, somewhere up north, maybe a cabin or something. I didn't ask too many details. She spent the next few days getting ready. She was out of the house more, saying she had to meet her friend to figure out the trip. She'd come back late, talking about logistics, where they'd stay, what they'd do. I didn't think much of it. She packed a bag, bought some stuff online, and kept her phone busy with texts. I assumed it was all normal planning stuff. She didn't act weird about it, so I let it go. Around the same time, my buddies asked me to go camping. It was a 3-day thing, just a few hours away. I hadn't seen them in a while, and with Jess leaving soon, I figured it'd be a good chance to get out too. She left for her trip the day before I did. I dropped her off at the bus station. She hugged me, said she'd see me in a week, and got on. I headed out with my friends the next morning. Camping was chill, hiking, beers, no signal. I didn't think about Jess much while I was gone. I got back from camping on a Sunday afternoon. The apartment was quiet since Jess was still on her trip. I unloaded my gear, took a shower, and went to grab my car keys. They weren't on the hook by the door where I always leave them. I checked the kitchen counter, my jacket pockets, even my backpack from the trip. Nothing. The car wasn't in the parking lot either. I stood there, confused, looking at the empty spot where my old Honda should have been. I called Jess right away. She picked up after a few rings. I asked where the car was. She didn't say anything for a second, then admitted she'd sold it. I couldn't believe it. She said she needed money for her trip and sold it while I was gone. My head was spinning. I asked how she could do that. It was my car, registered in my name. She said she found the title in my desk and took it to a guy she knew. I got loud, told her she had no right. She started crying, saying she didn't think I'd be this mad. I asked how much she got for it. She said $3,000? That was way less than it was worth. I'd paid $7,000 for it 2 years ago. I told her to get the car back right now. She said she couldn't, the guy had already taken it. I was furious. I asked why she needed $3,000 for a trip with a friend. She got quiet again. I kept pushing, and she finally said she'd used the money to help someone. I knew it was Mike before she even said his name. After Jess said she used the money for Mike, I lost it. I asked her what she meant, even though I already had a bad feeling. She said Mike was in a rough spot after his breakup with Lauren. He'd lost his job too, couldn't pay rent, and was crashing with some random people. Jess said she felt responsible for him, like she had to step in because no one else would. She sold my car to fund a trip with him, not her friend, to get him out of the city and reset. I couldn't even process it. My car was gone because she wanted to play savior for her ex. I asked why she lied about the friend. She said she knew I'd say no if she told me the truth. She thought I wouldn't find out until she got back, and by then she'd have some excuse ready. I told her that made it worse. She planned this, forged my name on the title, and ditched me to go play house with Mike. She kept saying she was sorry, that she didn't mean to hurt me. I didn't buy it. She'd been sneaky for weeks, maybe longer, and this was the result. I hung up and sat on the couch, staring at the wall. My car was my lifeline, work, groceries, everything. I'd spent months saving for it, fixing it up, keeping it running. Now it was gone, and she didn't even care. I started thinking about how she'd been acting, texting him, hiding stuff, that sad look she had when she talked about him. It hit me that this wasn't just about the car. She'd picked him over me, straight up. I didn't know if they were hooking up or what, but it didn't matter. The trust was dead. Later that day, I saw something that sealed it. I was walking to the store, on foot now, thanks to her, and ran into her friend Sarah. Sarah was the one Jess said she was going with. I asked how her trip was, just to see what she'd say. She looked confused, said she hadn't gone anywhere. I pressed her, asked if Jess had mentioned a trip. Sarah said no, they hadn't talked in weeks. That was it. Jess hadn't just lied about Mike, she'd made up the whole friend story. After talking to Sarah, I went straight home and called Jess again. She answered, still sounding shaky from our last call. I told her I'd seen Sarah and knew she wasn't on the trip. Jess didn't say anything at first, just breathed into the phone. I asked where she really was. She admitted she was with Mike, at some cheap motel a few hours away. They'd been there since she left, using my car money to pay for it. I asked what they were doing. She said they were just talking, trying to figure out his next move. I didn't believe her, but I didn't push it. I told her we were done. She started crying again, saying she didn't want to lose me. I said she should have thought about that before selling my car and running off with her ex. She begged me to wait, said she'd come home and explain everything. I told her not to bother, I didn't want to see her. I said she needed to pay me back the $3,000 she got for the car. She said she didn't have it anymore, that most of it was already spent on the motel and food. I got mad again, asked how she blew through that much in a few days. She didn't have an answer. I hung up and started packing her stuff. She didn't have much, just clothes, some books, a few random things. I put it all in trash bags and left them by the door. I didn't care where she went after this, but she wasn't staying here. I changed the locks that night. It cost me $50 I didn't really have, but I wasn't taking chances. I kept thinking about how she'd planned this, how she looked me in the eye and lied about the trip. It made me sick. A couple of days after I kicked Jess out, I decided to dig deeper. I still had Lauren's number from way back when we texted about Jess and Mike. I figured she might know something about this mess. I sent her a message, asking if she had a minute to talk about Mike. She replied fast, said sure, and I called her. I told her what Jess did, sold my car, took off with Mike, claimed it was to help him after their breakup. Lauren stopped me right there. She said she and Mike never broke up. They were still together, had been the whole time. I didn't get it at first. I asked her to explain. She said Mike had been acting weird lately, gone a lot, saying he was with friends or working late. But she hadn't suspected anything big. Then she started piecing it together. She said Jess had been around more than she realized, showing up at their place when Lauren wasn't home, texting Mike all the time. Lauren thought they were just friends too, until I told her about the trip. She checked Mike's phone after that, and saw messages from Jess going back months. They weren't just catching up, they were meeting up, planning stuff, acting like a couple behind our backs. I told Lauren about Jess saying Mike was jobless and broke. She laughed, said that was a lie. Mike still had his job, same one he'd had for years. They weren't rich, but he wasn't crashing with random people either. Jess had fed me a whole story that wasn't true. Lauren got quiet after that, said she was sorry I got dragged into it. I said the same to her. We both realized Jess and Mike had been playing us, probably for a while. I hung up feeling numb, but also pissed. Jess didn't just betray me, she built this whole thing on lies. After talking to Lauren, I sat down and tried to figure out my next move. Jess had texted me a few times since I ended it, asking to talk, saying she missed me. I didn't reply. Knowing she'd lied about everything, Mike's breakup, his situation, the trip, made me done with her for good. But I still needed my money back. I called her again, kept it short. I told her I knew Mike and Lauren were still together, that she'd been seeing him behind my back the whole time. She didn't deny it, just stayed quiet. I said she owed me $3,000, no excuses, and I wasn't letting it go. She said she didn't have the cash. I asked what she spent it on if Mike wasn't broke. She admitted they'd used it for the motel, some dinners, and gas to drive around. I told her that wasn't my problem, she stole from me, and she had to fix it. She said she'd try to get the money, but it'd take time. I didn't care. I told her to figure it out and send it when she had it. I hung up before she could argue. I started looking into the car situation too. I called the police, explained what happened. My girlfriend sold my car without permission, forged my name on the title. They said it was tricky since we lived together, might look like she had some right to it. But they took a report, gave me a case number. I tracked down the guy she sold it to, some dude from a sketchy ad online. He wouldn't give it back, said he paid for it fair and square. I didn't have the energy to fight him yet, but I kept his info. I wasn't letting this disappear. A few weeks passed after all this went down. Jess eventually sent me the money, $3,000 in chunks over a month. She didn't say where she got it, and I didn't ask. I used it to buy a beat-up old truck, nothing fancy, but it gets me to work. The police couldn't do much about the car since the guy who bought it had the title, forged or not. I thought about taking him to small claims court, but I didn't have proof Jess faked my signature. It wasn't worth the hassle. I let it go, wrote off the loss, and moved on. Jess tried calling once after the last payment, left a voicemail saying she was sorry and wanted to explain. I deleted it without listening. I heard from a mutual friend she's still with Mike. Lauren dumped him after she found out about Jess, and now they're living together somewhere out of state. I don't care enough to check. I blocked Jess on everything, got her stuff out of the apartment, and that was it. The place feels empty now, but I like it that way, nobody lying to my face anymore. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The texting, the fights, her always defending him, it was there the whole time. I trusted her too much, ignored the red flags. Lesson learned. I'm not dating anytime soon, work steady, friends are solid, and I've got my truck. That's enough for now. If Jess ever tries to come back, she's got no shot. I'm done being the guy who gets screwed over.